Just really moments after saying that he was going to tear up Nafta and pull out completely, President Trump has reversed course. According to a statement from the White House, President Trump agreed not to terminate Nafta at this time, and the leaders agreed to proceed swiftly according to their required international procedures to enable the renegotiation of the Nafta deal to the benefit of all three countries. So yeah, that's where we are right now. Talking Points memo says the statement from the White House followed two reports that Trump advisors had essentially gone so far as to draft an executive order to withdraw the United States from Nafta.
Well, you know, the thing is, Trump is an open-minded guy, and he actually looked into Nafta after saying that he would pull out and realized, you know, it's actually really complicated. Who would have known that it's actually really complicated?
No one would have known.
No one would have known.
He couldn't even get a 10-minute briefing about Nafta like he did about China and North Korea. That would have helped, right?
It would have helped, or just reading something. Anything about Nafta would have helped.
It's so weird, but I think it's baked into like his persona and his approach to everything. He is forgiven for all of these brash, overt moves that he just kind of comes up with and says to get a feel. He's throwing spaghetti on the wall all the time, and it seems like it excuses it somehow.
Yeah,
it's frustrating.
Look, I don't want anyone to misunderstand the way I'm responding to this story. I don't think that NAFTA is perfect. I think that it is flawed in many ways. It has had some unexpected, unintended consequences for both the United States and Mexico, and I'm sure to some extent Canada as well. I mean, for instance, you know, we produce so much cheap corn, and we're now, you know, exporting it to Mexico. And think about what's happening to all the farmers in Mexico who relied on their corn crops. So it's not just America suffering and everyone else is doing well. There are negative ramifications for everyone involved, but there are also positives. It is a complicated issue. And someone like Donald Trump continuously makes strong statements about various policies and then later doesn't actually follow through because he makes uneducated, ignorant statements about these policies or about these issues. And that's what's problematic here. It's not just about NAFTA, it's about every political issue that he has gotten involved in.
Yeah, that's true. And he's a guy who doesn't see the gray area, and so much of what happens in politics, in life, and certainly when you're talking about as something as specific as free trade happens in the gray area. And to, you know, he was advised by Bannon, he was advised by that guy who's the trade union guy, Navarro at the White House, or I mean, he's not at the White House, but he's with the trade union.
Yeah, the National Trade Industrial Council.
The Industrial Council, yeah, who, you know, they'll say, of course, it's in their best interest to say, let's get rid of this. Bannon's a PR guy, the Trade Council guy, of course, he wants to get rid of it just like that. But so many people's lives count on this free trade agreement that it's naive. Yeah, dismantle it, but do it in a reasonable way. Don't pull out of it, fix it, address it. It's not gonna be perfect. When Clinton put it in, it wasn't gonna be perfect. I remember Gerald Ford, who himself was president for a while, he wrote an editorial in one of the papers around the time NAFTA, supporting NAFTA at the time. And people were saying, well, he's an old guy at that point. It's gonna really hurt because it's a former president, it's a Republican, and you know, Clinton doesn't want to align himself. It turns out that he did. But in any case, they all predicted things that were going to be problematic with NAFTA. So rather than just fix it, Trump is doing what Trump does, saying it's either black or it's white. In his case, he preferred to be white, and he just wants to get rid of it. And now cooler heads have to prevail in more cases than they have with Trump, and it seems that they have to a degree. And so now Peña Nieto and Trudeau, who have a grasp of this sort of thing, maybe even more so than Trump does, even though they weren't dealing. But what I mean is that from the business side of it too, you know, you would expect that he would come in with some kind of, you know, intuition on the business part of it, which they seem to be outshining him on there. Which, you know, if you have one thing that you can say about Donald Trump, maybe he knows this. A tiny little bit. I mean, he's gone bankrupt a lot.
So what effect do you think this procedure of, you know, pull out a TPP, say I'm going to pull out a NAFTA, and then suddenly I'm going to renegotiate it? What effect does that kind of behavior have on the negotiation process?
Well, it helps him with voters, if you want to talk about that. I mean, it helps
you think it helps him with voters?
Yeah, it helps him live up to what those voters who were Midwest Union, blue-collar, white Americans who had soured on Clinton, soured on the Democrats, soured on being taken for granted. this is a promise to them in a weird way that they're going to like. Now, it doesn't matter what they like. Brett's question was, what's it going to matter to the deals, right?
To the deal, how's the deal going to go?
Yeah, I mean, the deal will be handled carefully over a long period of time, and we're not going to get like Donald Trump wants everything to be decided tomorrow. We're not going to know what, we're not going to pull out of NAFTA.
Yeah, 3 presidents worked on NAFTA.
Exactly.
You know, 3, it was Reagan, Bush, and then finally Clinton.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the vote to pass NAFTA, and it was 30, in the Senate, it was 34 Republicans and 27 Democrats. And which it kind of reflects how it would have to be. It's just such a weird alignment that we have now, because you have a Republican president who wants protectionist trade policies. If he gets that passed, he's going to be appealing to, you know, labor unions on the left, and pissing off staunch Republicans on the right who want free trade. Meanwhile, the folks who are negotiating this are like Wilbur Ross, who's just old money all the way.
Yeah,
it's absolutely, I don't know how it's going to come off.
Well,
but
you won't know for a while. It's going to take forever.
Yeah, you're right. But I do want to push back a little bit on how this is going to help him with voters. Because remember, the people who voted for him were individuals who loved his tough talk on everything, right? And everything that he said he was gonna do, he has either failed in doing or has completely switched, you know, his policy ideas in regard to them.
Yeah.
So he failed when it came to healthcare. He's failed when it comes to the Muslim ban. He's failed when it comes to, you know, stripping states that have sanctuary cities of federal funding. Like, he keeps failing. He keeps running into these roadblocks. And I don't know if that's resonating with his supporters at all, or if it's really like starting to hit a nerve with them, but
you're right. I mean, maybe I misspoke a little bit, but I'm not saying it's going to help him overall with voters. But there are single issue voters who voted for Donald Trump this time, who are, you know, in manufacturing and agriculture trade unions, who really are pissed off about free trade, right? Pulled out of TPP. Great. Yeah. I mean, we'll never know what would have happened had he lost with TPP. But we certainly know that these voters wanted him to pull out of TPP. And the fact that he's rejecting NAFTA has, and I'm sure that's why Bannon's behind it, has this political bonus for him, which is, like you said, odd that he is now. I mean, I wouldn't say the trade unions are so far to the left, but still that he's talking to union people and trying to appease them by pulling out of a protectionist, agreement, I think is interesting.
And there has been talk specifically about the TPP framework, the things that Mexico agreed to within the TPP, kind of being the kinds of things that they would talk about in negotiating NAFTA, like what is it, and then everything being on the table, using this as a way to leverage immigration, and I don't know. There's so much that can happen. All I know is that the only thing that Trump can do unilaterally is like tweak an individual tariff on an individual product, and even then it's not clear. But if he does that, that sounds like it's more in line with what he's done before, which is to go look at a list of jobs that have moved to Mexico, pick an individual industry affected, switch the tariff a little bit on that, and declare victory for 30,000 jobs.
Right. I like that you brought up a little bit of the international relations component of this, because it also shows another flaw in the way that Trump handles things. Because on one hand, you'll hear him, you know, saying some pretty unsavory things about Mexico's president in regard to building the wall and immigration and all that. So he'll say offensive things, he'll just kind of speak off the cuff without really thinking about it ahead of time or strategizing ahead of time. And then stuff like this comes up and he wants to renegotiate NAFTA. Well, you need to have some diplomacy in the way that you handle your interactions with world leaders. And he doesn't seem to understand that. He's been so used to getting what he wants and being given everything that he wants that he's just, I feel like he's blindsided sometimes. Like when, you know, the federal judges block him from doing what he wants to do in his executive orders, he seems like befuddled. Like,
right.
He just doesn't know the rules.
And that bolsters your point. You get the feeling that it's not just with international leaders, it's with the Congress, it's with the courts, right? So you get the feeling that like Peña Nieto and Trudeau picked up the phone with, like, what the fuck is this guy thing, right? You know? And you get the feeling that leaders in Congress are doing that with themselves. Both Republicans, I'm sure Ryan and McConnell have had late night conversations that are really dull, but where they're saying the exact same, well, we got to do, I don't know, we don't know how to deal with this, you know, but that's what's happening. So I think that you're absolutely right, and it happens at home too, not just in the world.
The real resistance is fighting against Trump and the establishment. Help us get investigative reporters that are going to investigate both of them. tytnetwork.com/go.